Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Commerce. My name is Zubin, and I'm the president of VaynerCommerce, and I am ecstatic to have our guest today. We know him as the king of Shopify Plus. His formal title is the VP and GM of Shopify Plus. Thanks for joining us, Loren.
Hey, Zubin. Thanks very much. I hope like Harley and Toby just heard that introduction. I think I should get business cards printed with that. That'd be amazing.
If you're still getting business cards printed, then we got a different kind of problem here.
That's right. I guess I just changed my LinkedIn profile.
There you go. Loren, thanks for joining us. Let's take several steps back. Tell us about yourself and your path into Shopify Plus.
So my path into Shopify. So I have been in sales and marketing my whole career, and that's my background is sales. I started selling photocopiers right out of university. That was not what I intended to do. I was going to be a criminal psychologist. That did not. Apparently, there's no such thing as a 20-year-old criminal psychologist. So I had to get a real job. So I went into sales and started there. Slowly but surely, started building sales teams and leading sales teams, and just kept doing that. Started taking bigger pieces of companies in terms of marketing, customer support, whatever it happens to be, moving around. So I was in software for a long time. I was in enterprise software most of my career, selling 9-figure deals to the government, to giant corporations, all that kind of stuff. And I had moved to the U.S. for an opportunity. We had done well, sold that company, and so I was looking, what to do next. Came back to Canada, didn't know quite what I was going to do. Didn't have a job when I came back, just was like looking around, and saw a job posting for Shopify, and saw this job posting for the VP of Sales at Shopify, which made no sense to me why Shopify would post this job online. If you're at that moment, Shopify's pre-IPO, if you didn't know who Shopify was, like if you weren't in Canada, you probably weren't quite aware of Shopify. If you were in Canada, you knew this thing, Shopify existed. It was fast growth. So I was very confused why they would post this job. So I had absolutely no connection to the company. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't have any relationships. So I did the thing everyone says you can't do, which is apply for a job online. So I totally applied for the job on LinkedIn, and just figured no one's ever going to call back. Like again, they must have their pick of whoever they want. And so nothing happened for 9 weeks, and then I got a call from a recruiter 9 weeks later, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to come talk to us?" And that started a 16-week interview process.
Wow,
which was a fascinating journey into the psychology of Shopify and what they were thinking. And but the fundamental was, hey, we built this amazing business that you can start companies on. And some of those companies get really, really successful. They have really great ideas. The problem is historically the software market was stratified. And so you had this, if you're small, you use Excel, right? Mm-hmm. Then you grow up and you use QuickBooks, and then like when you're past QuickBooks, you eventually run into SAP, right? And so our customers were growing up, and they were like, "Well, I guess I have to buy the big software now. I guess I'm big. I'm going to go buy enterprise software." And this was confounding to Shopify and to Toby and Craig and Harley as to like, why would the customers who have had the most success leave? That seems crazy. Let's stop that. And so they were like, do that. Figure out how to stop that from happening. And I was like, sorry, what? Is that a job? I don't like. You didn't actually say it. What do you want me to do? They're like this problem. Stop this problem from happening. So that became what it is Plus today. Is I got that job, and they were like, we have this nascent thing that we're not quite sure what it is, and not quite sure how to scale it up, and we don't really have a ton of experience with the quote unquote enterprise, and so see what you can do with it. And that was my path.
What year was this?
This was in October of 2014.
October 2014. So, and then you moved to Waterloo.
Okay, so this depends on who you want to ask at Shopify how this story goes. Okay, I'm going to give you my version. which Toby has a slightly altered version, Harley has a slightly altered version. My version is this. As part of the interview process, they were like, we think this is going to be an independent thing. We want you to run it independently. Mm-hmm. And so you can pick, you can open up a new office. We want you to open up a new Shopify office. You can open it up anywhere in the world, as long as it's Southern Ontario and it's not Toronto and it's not Ottawa. And so I was like, okay, I mean, that'd be cool. That sounds cool. So we'll look around. To me, it was kind of obvious. It's like Waterloo, the University of Waterloo, Laurier, Wilfrid Laurier University, Guelph, University of Guelph, where I went, was close by. You had this great tech community, and so I was like, yeah, we'll put it in Kitchener-Waterloo, and we'll feed off that ecosystem, hire great people, and so 2015, January 2015, we rented our first space in Kitchener-Waterloo, hired the first official employees of this thing called Plus, the first 5 sales reps into the business to complement an existing crew, a small crew that was already there, kind of chipping away at it. And here we go, man, off to the races. No idea what we were doing, no idea what we were trying to do, right? Just like craziness.
And just to kind of reiterate what you mentioned to everybody, so you've got Shopify, which everybody now pretty much in the commercial world is aware of. And what was happening, to Loren's point, is that these brands were growing out of Shopify. And so the idea was, how do we keep them in this ecosystem? And that's why Loren was brought on board to basically build and grow Shopify Plus, which is now the standard, if you will, in growth e-commerce or e-commerce platforms or growth brands. So let's talk a little bit about for the audience. So this is going to be an interesting episode for those of you that are just starting out in e-commerce. This is more of like an aspirational episode for you, because we're really going to talk about big e-commerce business here and how to get to that point. So when you were, let's talk about the first kind of wave of brands that came onto Shopify Plus, the ones that were basically graduating Shopify, and then the ones that came from outside. And the differences that you saw in those two within those first 2-3 years, then we'll get into like more today, what's happening in the space.
Yeah. So Toby, Harley, and Craig had a really great fundamental premise, which was the software market shouldn't have to be stratified. Why can't you start and grow forever? Why do you have to leave? Why do you have to keep upgrading? Right? And so this became like our operating mission, is like, let's build a platform Shopify wide where you can start and you can grow to any size and scale. So Plus was the next logical extension of, you get successful, you get to a certain size, a certain complexity, and we need to give you the on-ramp into being bigger and scaling up and going global. So as you said, the first 6 months was like upgrades. It was looking at the Shopify customer base and saying, if you go back into that historical time, you had like the Chive and Chubbies and the OGs of Shopify who were there from the beginning, and like really, I think got a lot of attention for Shopify because they were funded and they were getting a lot of. You had folks using their stuff. You had presidents using their stuff. Anyways, so they were the first obvious choices. They were like, yeah, we want this. And so we were, to be honest, that's what I thought we were going to do, is we were going to upgrade people. Right? And it was like, great, I have a big feeder system from Shopify. This is going to be great. We're going to upgrade people. Then an interesting thing started to happen. We started to get inbound calls from companies that weren't on Shopify, and they were like, what is this Plus thing that you have? Is it for us? Like, is it for the mid-market companies? Like, we know who Shopify is, but is this thing for like the mid-market? And I'll admit, I was actually very confused by those first phone calls, because my assumption was that there was a version of Shopify in the mid-market. Like somebody was innovating at the higher level. And so I had to stop and ask myself, like, what is this? Why are we getting these inbound calls? So then I looked over to that community and was like, what's out here in the mid-market? And what I found was a wasteland of garbage. Like just a sea of terrible platforms, which it made no sense to me, because I was like, oh my God, this is a huge market. Why isn't anyone doing anything cool here? And so that became the kind of next obvious step. It's like, well, we should do to the mid-market what Shopify did to like pure startup entrepreneurship. And so the first bellwether was Red Bull. And so, everyone knows Red Bull. It's a gargantuan brand. And, we started talking to Red Bull, and those conversations were hilarious because they were like, who are you? What is this Shopify thing? Like, we're Red Bull. Like, you can't possibly do this. And so we went through a process with them where we started to show them what we could do. And at one point, the conversation switched to like, this can't be true, what you're saying. Like, it's not what you're suggesting you can do doesn't seem possible, because we have on this other side this giant software company who's charging us millions of dollars and like took years to implement, and you're saying you can just turn this on. And we're like, I remember saying to the decision maker, all right, look, what's the worst case scenario here? You spend a few grand, right? And you're wrong? Or you spend a few grand and you're right. We're not what we say we are. You spend a few grand and I'm right, and I am what I say I am, right? And he was like, that's a good point, right? And he's like, let's try this. And so we tried it, crushed it, and that became the first. And so when that one launched, I think a lot of people in the mid-market paused for a second, and they're like, what is Red Bull doing on Shopify? And that became the kind of like the door opener for a lot of other folks to start to look at Plus and say, man, can we use this thing? And I like, to me, that was the first like major brand that kicked off this idea of Shopify was now in the mid-market and had an actually viable option that was scaled and robust enough and feature rich and that kind of stuff. And it kind of just cascaded from there. We started loading brands, and that was kind of the first.
Our kind of experience was the same. So being one of the first Shopify Plus partners in essentially from 2016 till now, we have events in the US and the UK, et cetera. And it was really interesting to see that in like 16, 17, nobody had heard of Shopify Plus, really. They'd heard of Shopify. And then when you talk about Shopify Plus, they're like, oh, well, yeah, but we're going to be going to this platform or that platform because it's for the mid-market or for enterprise, whatever the fuck enterprise means, which we'll get into in a minute. And then eventually it became association preference. So, oh yeah, I know that this brand is on it and that brand is on it. And then eventually, where we are today, is the association has in some ways inverted. And so what I mean by that is Shopify Plus and us as an agency and others benefited from brands like Red Bull being on Shopify Plus. Now you look at the PEVC community and they actually want their brands to be on Shopify Plus because of what they can deliver on Shopify Plus, the speed, all that stuff. So I think it's a remarkable story in a very short period of time. And just one of the things I want to comment on that may have been missed, and for all of those of you that are on Shopify right now, there are very few, if any. I mean, I can't even name one, but I'm just assuming there's some out there. But they're software platforms that allow you to gracefully upgrade. And so what I mean by that is you go to these other platforms and they have a basic version, enterprise version, whatever. That's an actual complete software rebuild. Whereas in the world of Shopify, you go from Shopify to Advanced to Plus. It's literally signing a contract, click of the button, and all of a sudden you have all these features available. So I think that graceful path is really an interesting one for brands because they know that they can come in at any point and they can grow within there. So let's talk a little bit about understanding Shopify and how it grew and whatnot. Let's now shift to, you saw a lot. I mean, you've been firsthand. You've seen brands grow on the platform and just brands direct to consumer just explode over the last 5 years. What were some of the opportunities, low-hanging fruit opportunities for these brands when they first started, say in 16, 17? And then what are some of those opportunities now? How has the market changed for somebody entering direct to consumer now?
Yeah. I think that the opportunity has always been, as a direct to consumer brand, to engage directly with a customer and to create a story and to engage in a bi-directional relationship with that customer. The challenge for high growth brands and for large brands is that the technology got in the way of that. You actually had to build giant IT organizations, and you basically needed to turn yourself into a software company in order to just operate any of the tools that you had. And therefore, you weren't a brand anymore. You were a software company. And this is where the legacy brands struggled really hard, is they really wanted to engage customers, but they had spent so much money and time and effort and resources on the platforms they were trying to use, it just distracted them and slowed them all down. And so what you saw with, if you think digital 1.0, the Zappos and Bonobos and all those, they went to market as technology companies.
Yep.
Because they were like, what am I going to do? I'm going to build an e-commerce platform. What's it going to take? $20 million in VC. Because that's what it took to build this kind of scale. Whereas the 2.0s, right, the Allbirds, the Rothys, those kinds of brands, they were like, wait. I'm not spending $20 million on IT. I'm spending $20 million on customer experience, right? Yep. And on brand. And, that was the rise of Shopify, and the rise of Plus was like, the platform should get out of the way. We should enable it, but you shouldn't have to invest your whole company's bank account to just maintain a giant piece of software. That's an insane value proposition. The only market in the world I'm aware of with this kind of dynamic is software. Historically, and still today, there is an inverse relationship between the amount of money you pay for software and the outcomes you get. And so, in enterprise software, it's the only place I can find. If you buy a Toyota Camry, there's nothing wrong with Toyota Camrys, but a Toyota Camry and a Ferrari are not the same thing. And a Ferrari is much more expensive because it's a much bigger piece of kit, right? It's faster, it's handmade, all this kind of stuff. Enterprise software, you pay millions of dollars, it gets worse. It is fascinating how this works. I've never found another market like it. And so, we just showed up and was like, well, this seems nuts. Why don't we just give you powerful software that allows you to be a brand so that you can engage with your customers and have that bi-directional relationship, and we are just a support mechanism instead of half of your business. And I think it sounds revolutionary from a software perspective, but it's what everyone's always wanted. They just could never get. It's what Toby wanted when he started Shopify. He just couldn't find, and so he just built it himself.
Well, and then the problem, to your point, is that because of, I guess, conditioning or experience, the expectation is that you pay more and you get more. But the reality, as we've all seen, is that, and the problem, I think, part of the challenge here is you get enterprise software and you get a lot of bloat. You get 500 different features, of which you might not even care about 495 of them, right? Some of them are just built because somebody decided that they wanted to build them some product management company or individual. But team, the problem is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all model in this direct-to-consumer. And I think one of the things that resonated with me, like 16, 17 in Shopify, we were at Unite, like the first Unite in San Francisco, the developer agency partner conference. One of the things that was said is look, Shopify has built 80% of what everybody needs, and it's out of the box, including Shopify Plus. And the other 20% is what you can add to it to make it true to your brand. Because every customer experience is different. Some people want to engage with their customers online. Some people want to engage with them after purchase. Some want to do it before purchase. Some want to do it via text, SMS, whatever it is. But the reality is, when you get that bloat, they almost fit you, from an enterprise standpoint, you get fit into this situation where, on one hand, you have significant CapEx costs in terms of operating that software that you can't put into the consumer experience or even consumer marketing. So, but it was, from our perspective too, it was a really challenging idea or notion to get across, that you're not spending $100,000 a month, you're spending a few grand a month, and you can spend the rest of that money on acquiring customers.
Right. And so, okay, so I'm going to try and be as polite as I can to
don't worry about it.
The legacy hierarchy that exists. And this is as polite as I can be. It's a mafia. Okay? It's a perfectly designed system. And so I've written about this before. I think about this as enterprise software is the matrix. Right? Everyone in it is designed and everyone's asleep. And they're asleep because for 50 years, this has been the way that it operates. And it's a mafia of companies and consulting firms whose best interest is to make the most complicated platforms they can that require their existence in order to operate. And so they feed off of this system. And so big organizations have been wrongly told that because you're big and you're complicated, you require this heaviness, this bloat, because that's what big companies do. The problem is that's just not true. Technically speaking, that's no longer the case. It might have been 20 or 30 years ago, but it's just not true anymore. But no one's told them. And so what you're explaining was in the first 2 years of Shopify, the biggest pushback I got was, I don't believe you.
Yep.
I don't believe what you're saying. There's no way you can run a business at scale with the team size you're suggesting and the cost model you're suggesting. In the real world, and I got told this, I still get told this, in the real world, with real customers, what you're saying won't work. Now, all I kept reminding them was, apparently this real world is a terrible place to live, right? Like it sounds like it sucks, right? And so what happened is as you said, we started to get customers. And so just for reference, for everyone who's listening, because you may not know, because I like to be quiet. I don't like to be quiet. I like Plus to be quiet because I think it's a better position to let our customers talk for us. Like we don't have to talk. When we started Plus, largest customer on the platform was about $10 million, right? In GMV. Largest customer on the platform today is well over $1 billion. And so as we went through these echelons of ratcheting up the customers in terms of size and scale, what happened is it destroyed that narrative. The enterprises actually got stuck. The legacy platforms were stuck in this lie, which is all it was a lie. Was you can't run at scale on Shopify. And it was like, oh, but how do you explain that $200 million merchant and that $1 billion merchant and that giant legacy retailer? And so it just started to implode on itself. And now we are where we are. Whereas I think what's happening, especially because of COVID, is everybody's now like, I'm not paying $100 million a year for software anymore. I'm not taking 18 months to implement anything. I don't have 500 people I'm going to employ to do this. And it's like, and I can't do that anymore because I need to be a brand, not a technology company. And there's the choice we're in. And it's like, you want to be a tech company? Call the legacy. You want to be a brand? Call us.
Yeah, totally. And I think part of it, I mean, you alluded to this, which is, look, making software, writing software, the tools, the platforms, the frameworks, the languages that were available were different 30 years ago than they are today.
Sure.
And so now you're coming, and for all of you, sorry we're getting super geeky on this. We just love talking about this shit. But we'll get back to like the real world. Not the real world that Loren was talking about, but the real world in a minute. But the tools that are available now, you can iterate much faster. You can write software faster. And so the reality is what Shopify has done is said, look, we can charge the same as everybody else, but there's no need to. We can charge what is necessary and then allow them to spend this money elsewhere. And then going back to the point of consultants, I think there's a lot of value that consultants can add in certain areas, but it's time for those consultants to evolve as well and not just decomplicate super complicated software for their customers and move into the other side of the equation and help them with their actual growth.
Right. And so don't get me wrong. This isn't a knock on the consulting agencies, right? They are vital in this process. It's the historical ones who tied themselves to the legacy platforms. Their business model was throw as many humans and billable hours at you as they possibly can in perpetuity. Full stop. That was it. That was the only way they measured success.
Sure.
I put 1,000 people into that company for 5 years. I'm a successful company. That's unbelievable. What we're suggesting is you should have a fair exchange, right? We want to enable the innovation that happens in commerce. And so innovation is experimentation. It's channel optimization. It's social engagement. So if you're going to be a DTC brand, you have to optimize so many things right now that the last thing you can really pay attention to is what is like this software platform in the background, right? It should just be there, allowing you to do the things you need to do. And your partners, agencies, digital firms, all that kind of stuff, should be focused on the brand optimization side, not on the how do I bill you for hours worth of work on my software platform. And because right now, customer experience, channel optimization, right, social optimization, is it. If you aren't a monster in these spaces, you're going to get drowned in the noise, right? And so it's just like I say to customers when I talk to them, if you have $1, do not spend money on software. Spend money on customer experience. The moment you choose that, like, I want to spend money on servers and I want to spend money on security patches and I want to spend money on IT folks, it's like you're going to drift real close to being a software company. And I can tell you, being a software company is hard on its own. I don't know how you can be a brand and a software company.
Sure.
And so, like, I just think it's like what we want to do is enable the DTC players and the innovators to do what they really wanted to do, which was talk to customers, not have to worry about software.
Manage stuff. So let's put the software side of it aside for a moment. So let's get out of our, as you put it, let's let the software get out of the way and let's perform. So let's talk about observations that you've had. So again, you are in the thick of it. You are aware and seeing kind of data across all sorts of sectors. Obviously, with COVID, the types of organizations that are wanting to sell online now are different than they were before, or there's an emergence of the retail CPG brands that are coming into the fray. Let's talk a little bit about where you envision kind of the .com versus, and not versus as in not doing it, but like within this entire ecosystem. You've got the retailer, you've got the .com, you've got the Amazon.coms of the world, and then you've got now Facebook Shop, Instagram Shop, etc. How do they coexist? So for people out there that want to be on all these channels or some of them or whatnot, how should they think about that entire ecosystem?
Yeah. So my perspective is COVID was a time machine. It brought 2030 to 2020. And what it brought with it was a massive digital transformation that was already starting, but got monstrously accelerated and caught a lot of people out. There were a lot of businesses not ready for this. Commerce companies, DTC brands, it doesn't actually matter. There's a lot of companies that weren't ready. So here's where I see this is it's kind of a tale of 3.5 stories. Okay? The first is the DTC digital natives, right, who are already heavily invested. They knew that ultimately you have to be where your customer is. The days of owned property, right? Like it used to be, you go back 15 years, your .com address was the place. It's your whole entire strategy was funnel them into your single .com address. And that's how you were going to convert. The digital natives have proven that actually doesn't work that way. Yes, your own property is super valuable. It's got to be perfect. You've got to have it. It's got to be great. But you've got to also find the customers where they are. And they could be anywhere. Online, right? For sure. .com is the thing. Social. So where are they hanging out? Are they on Pinterest? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Facebook? Are they on, like, whatever it is, right? Physical. Are they in the real world? Do we have to go get them in the real world? Marketplaces. Are they hanging out on marketplaces? The list goes on and on and on. You had to have a mechanism to engage consumers in all of those channels. That was critical. Well, that was Shopify from the beginning, was like, yeah, we're going to start to create the channel pipe. Is like, oh, you want that one? I got an integration to that one. I got an integration to that one. I got an integration to that one. And so you could operate. Shopify and Plus have become the operating system for commerce. And so you sit in and you just like that to that to that to that to that, right? And you can go and get the channels that you want. Single channel threading is, death for a brand. Right?
Explain that to the audience.
Okay.
It's a really important point.
So if you believe that you're going to get all of your revenue from a single channel, whether it's your .com or some social media platform or some marketplace, what you've immediately done is, if you look at the pie of all of your customers, is you've eliminated some section of them. Because no matter what you use, no matter how big one of those channels might be, there are a set of customers who don't go there, right? And so you're just losing them. So you've intentionally limited your own customer exposure. And for what? Well, the general answer was, well, I don't know how to sell on that one. I don't know how to sell on that one. I don't have an integration to that one. I don't
Yep.
And so, we've tried to solve all those problems by being, that's fine. Just load up Shopify, pick the channels, start deploying, right? And we continue to work through all those channels. There's lots of them, but like giving that model. But that channel mix is so critical to customer access and conversion that you've got to be thinking about it. Okay, so I'm going to go back now to the tale of 3.5 stories. So you have the digital natives who kind of knew that from the beginning, right? They were already blowing up traditional brands because they were just creating communities, they were creating conversations, they had thin sliced their markets, they knew exactly who they were talking to, and the traditional brands couldn't deal. They were all over the channels. They didn't need the traditional model. And so COVID hit and they were like, we got you, right? We'll just adapt, right? They were quick, they adapted, they moved around, and they've been successful. So then you had the legacy brands, right? So legacy retail, COVID blew up their worlds in a hurry because most of them had underinvested in that channel mix. They'd underinvested in digital. They had relied heavily on physical. And so they found themselves, when their physical doors got closed, they had no digital door to open, or their digital door was unprepared for them. And so you saw these legacy brands blow up over time, like massive brands. Sites start crashing, everyone, like nowhere to buy anything, can't deliver, all these kinds of
blow
things.
up in a negative sense, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, blow up in the negative sense.
Yeah.
Because they weren't ready for this. They weren't in the places they needed to be. Their consumers were like, I want to buy from you, but you're not letting me. Okay, so they rapidly started trying to reformat themselves, right? And are still in that stage where they thought they had 10 years, now they have 10 weeks, and they have to completely change their entire DNA because this digital thing ain't going away, right? So they're in this pseudo panic mode of like, how do we reformat ourselves? How do we become like those digital natives, right? So you see that the second group is like, we got to become like the first group. So that transition's happening, and it's happening in full flight, right? Every Fortune 500 retailer on earth is in full retransformation of themselves. Okay. The third group, and this is where I get to the 3.5, is the CPGs. Anyone who relied on a intermediary between them and their customers has now realized this is a really bad long-term strategy. It's not that the intermediaries aren't valuable. It can't be your only channel. Again, they had a single channel. And that channel went away in a hurry, but also has their own problems to deal with. And so has started to try to disintermediate house brands. Every major shopping grocery store in the world, every major market in the world is creating house brands to compete directly with the people who were in their environment. Right? So whether it's the big digital marketplaces or the big physical marketplaces, house brands are a thing. They're competing directly. And so you've seen this rapid rise of the CPGs going direct to consumer. And so you see the brands on Shopify like Lindt and Heinz and Princess Foods and InBev and everyone direct to consumer, direct to consumer, direct to consumer. Now they're largely experiments. They're trying to learn how to do this. But like, that's a shift. That's a shift, realizing that I've got to expand my channel mix, and direct to consumer is a thing, and digital direct to consumer is a thing. And so this isn't going to slow down. This is going to accelerate. This is going to get more and more as those brands try and recreate themselves as direct to consumer brands. And the half is the companies that like exist in all those places at once, right? It's like, you had a piece that was digitally native, and then you had a piece that was legacy, and a piece, and they're just like doubling down on the things that were working and backing themselves out of the things that weren't. So this digital transformation is fast. It's not going away. This is our new normal. This is how this is going to work. I hate omnichannel as a concept because I think for the last 10 years, people have really screwed up what that means.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just say it's like, you got to be where your customers are. And if you're not, you're just missing some of them, full stop. And so it's a choice, I guess, but it's a bad choice. And so there's where I think we are and what we're seeing in the market.
Yeah, that's fantastic insight. I appreciate that. Let's talk about omnichannel, but not maybe in the way that everybody else talks about it. So yes, omnichannel is cliche. Everybody talks about omnichannel. But there's a fundamental challenge here. And again, you alluded to it just a couple of minutes ago. So which is, you sell on your .com, you build a relationship with the consumer. Mm-hmm. You sell on Facebook Shop and you integrate it with Shopify, plus on the back end. you build a relationship with the consumer because you know who they are. The whole idea of omni-channel is that there's one consumer view. So if they go and they buy in the store and then they come online, you know who they are and you deliver it for them. Or if they're, and we do this with several of our clients that are on Shopify Plus. They have their own stores, and they have, one of them has several hundred stores, and so we integrate it so that if you go into the store, you can basically pull up all the orders you had online. You go online, you know what you looked at in the store, all that stuff, right? That's like omni-channel. But there's a gap here. And what I'm trying to understand and get your insight on is, I go to Nordstrom and I buy this shirt. Whomever made this shirt, I don't know who it is, I'll find out later. Whoever designed this shirt does not know who I am at all. All they know is that they did this much in sales this month or this quarter at Nordstrom. And understandably, Nordstrom doesn't want to give this brand my information because they're afraid that I'm not going to go back to Nordstrom and I'm going to buy from this brand. How do you, in this idea of omni-channel and sharing data and having insight into your consumer, how do retail brands, because I think this is going to be critical for them, how do they share that information or incentivize to share that information with the brands that are in there without fearing or circumventing the issue of losing that consumer?
Yeah. So I think what you're raising is what fundamentally is happening with retail as an industry, right? And as a structure, which is resetting the rules of how it's supposed to work. So what you're describing is the marketplace model that has existed for millennia, right? I mean, this is how retail has happened forever, is you had an intermediary who allowed your products to come to market, and they controlled the customers, right? And so you were at the mercy of that intermediary and whatever they were going to allow to happen. Well, what we've seen with consumers, and the real shift came when we got one of these, when all of us got one of these, and now I have all the control. Like stores have no control. In some sense, it's like I, as a consumer, can choose whatever I want to choose whenever I want to choose it.
Yep.
And has reversed this curve to the point where anyone who sees it as it is my customer, not yours, is going to be in a real challenging position, because I'm not anyone's customer. Exactly. Right? I can go wherever I want. And so if you don't tailor this so that the experience for me is exactly what I want, I'm going to stop shopping from you. I don't care who you are. And so this is, I think, where you see these relationships being changed slowly, but it's going to accelerate, especially because of COVID, where this wall between, well, I sold it, so I own that customer experience, and you're never going to be able to understand it, has to come down. And both the originating brand, start your own direct-to-consumer pitch. Like, okay, so maybe I'll go a little bit more into the weeds. If you are a brand who makes, I'm going to use your shirt model, you make shirts, and your channel has been Macy's, JCPenney, whatever it is, Nordstrom, right? If you don't have your own direct-to-consumer presence right now, and you aren't doubling down on all of that, and you're not trying to create that experience, and you're not trying, like, start today, right now, get off of this call, right? Like, I'll permit you, stop watching us talk about this, go and start your own brand and start engaging those consumers. Because that's the expectation those consumers have. And once they find you, right, now they're working directly with you. Those intermediaries are also going to have to realize that if I buy what you just described, if I go into a Nordstrom and I buy a shirt, and then I can't complete this cycle with the brand itself, right? And I'm going to just get annoyed, because I'm going to just be like, I want to know. I want to know who I'm buying things from. I want to know where it comes from. I want to know the story. I want to know the things. It benefits Nordstrom. It benefits the brand. It benefits everybody. This zero-sum game of either or is just a way to go bankrupt. Period, full stop. Everyone's got to figure out that this is a life cycle approach.
Spot on.
Right?
Spot on.
And so, like, the faster we get there, and largely the DTC brands they get that. The struggle we're having is the legacy retailers thinking that they are still in control. But the faster we get there, the better retail gets. Everyone rises with this. No one loses out here.
It goes back to your point of being asleep, right? The reality is, I buy this shirt. All I have to do, I know what the designer is. Maybe I don't know this one specifically, but when I buy it, I know who it is. When I buy it, all I have to do is go online, and now I've got a relationship with them. So
Right.
the Nordstroms of the world realize that, right? But their moat in their minds have been, that's my customer, to your point.
Right.
And yes, that is your customer, but it doesn't mean that it can't be someone else's customer as well. And that is the fundamental shift that has to occur, so that they understand that, look, this consumer can go buy from that brand online anyway, right?
Right.
But what can I, as Nordstrom, add value? And it takes me back to the old Radio Shack days. Right. So I went to Radio Shack. For those of you who don't know what Radio Shack is, then it was called the Shack, and then people were confused that that was a burger place. But the Shack, Radio Shack rather, Radio Shack was a place you went to buy like electronic components, chips, stuff like that. And then they had other things as well, like actually built computers and laptops. But I went there to buy wires and whatnot when I was younger. But the people there were experts. Mm-hmm. And that's what you got in that environment. What you're not getting in retail right now is you're not getting expertise. So the reason I should want to go to Nordstrom is because somebody looks at me and goes, hey, let's figure out your style and figure out what you like, and let's put together some looks for you and do this and do that. Things that I can't do on my own. And then what they can do is extend that online, so that when I'm at Nordstrom.com or I'm at whatever retailer.com, or Huda Beauty is doing a great job of this, you can actually do a live consultation for free with the people in the store that are supposed to give you value. And that's how, excuse me, that's how you elevate the real experience, and not just not give access to customers because you think that customer is not going to go find the brand.
Right. And I think it's 100% true. And, you want to provide services that are beneficial to the brands themselves, but the consumers also want the story. Like, this is one of the things that has become really clear, is story matters. And story matters even more post-COVID than maybe it did before COVID, right? Where your stuff comes from, the safety it's created in, right? The mechanism it's delivered to you. All these things matter a lot. And, and there's a perfect symbiotic relationship that can exist here. These big retailers have a lot of things that DTC brands don't have. Distribution, right? Physical access, storage facilities, logistics experience, like a lot of things. And to be fair to legacy retail, it's not all a disaster. You can see them trying. Some of them are trying to figure out how to do this. And so, Radio Shack is a good legacy example, but like, I'll give you, like, up here in Canada, Staples, like these marketplaces of like they're not even trying to block the brands. They're like, no, you want to talk to the brand? We'll introduce you to the brand. Yeah. We'll help you with the brand. Because here's what we know. If you found that via us, yes, you will create a relationship with them, which is good for them, but you will also probably come back to us because that was such a good experience. And so everybody benefits. And so you can see this. It's weird because like department stores for a while had this kind of model, and then they went away from it because you could go into department stores and they had like the mini shops inside of them, the Ralph Lauren shop, the this shop, the that shop. And they were staffed by people who knew that brand and knew that thing. And it made you, it's like, I didn't want to go to the, particular department store, but that's where the mini shop was for the thing I really wanted. And so walking through their store to find it, I passed a million other things I should buy. It's, again, I look at it and I say, all boats rise once we realize that no one owns the consumer. Mm-hmm. The consumer owns the brands, right? And so like the more we optimize this experience, and this is why you see some of these super heavy growth DTC brands just disintermediating all these channels, is because what they've said is like, if you're not willing to do it with us, we're going to do it on our own. And that experience is going to be so good, no one's ever going to come to you again, right? And so there's a huge opportunity here for DTC brands and legacy retailers to come together and create a new way of shopping for consumers that will be beneficial to both, that will reinvent retail from its ground up. But it has to drop this idea of mine versus yours, this zero-sum structure. It makes no sense.
Absolutely. And I think the whole concept of zero sum, percolates and goes beyond just this, right? Like, it is a concept of fear and building moats around yourself because you feel like there's a limited amount of anything, attention, love, money, whatever it is. But the reality is the world is changing. The world has changed and it's going to continually change. And that zero sum mentality in any aspect of your life, frankly, there's no room for it, or you should get rid of it.
It's focusing on the wrong problem.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and it's focusing on fear, right? The zero sum is focusing on fear as opposed to opportunity.
And to be fair, like, a lot of these legacy retailers are just going to go out of business. That's just the truth. We're watching it happen. This will accelerate. Malls are like, I heard a fascinating statement that said, there are 300 amazing malls in the United States. The problem is there are 2,700 malls. And it's just like, it was such a poignant way to put it. It's like, this is part of the problem, is we're over retailed in a lot of ways. And so we're going to see this reformatting of this industry, and it's going to, people want to shop. People want to shop physically, digitally, everything. They want to shop in all the ways. Retail isn't dead. Crap retail is dead.
Yep.
Right. And so, like, those who optimize for the customer experience win, full stop. Those who optimize for their own profitability, square footage utilization, whatever it happens to be, I don't know what to tell you. That worked for 100 years. And every time I hear someone say we've weathered all of these storms, we've been here for 200 years, I just roll over and I'm like, I gotta go, because if that's your mentality, this isn't going to work. So like that's where we are. Is when COVID happened, Toby came to Shopify and he's like, throw out all the plans we had before COVID because they don't mean jack. We got to rewrite all the rules and move forward from here. My advice to legacy retail is like, I don't know what your plans were before, but time to let go of all these historical ways it was going and think about it as, how do you create the best experience for consumers with your partners in retail,
and brands. Yep.
Not against your partners and brands, right?
Totally.
Otherwise, you're the odd man out, and these brands are smaller, nimbler, more experimental. They will just remove you from the equation. It's already happening. The DTC brands will live on. They will survive. The legacy retailers won't, unless they change their way.
Brilliant. Let's jump into some questions. If you guys have questions, love the ones that are already in the comments. Keep adding them. We'll get to as many as we can. And obviously, as you can tell, Loren is an abundance of knowledge, and so we're going to have them back pretty soon here. Chef Lizette, our favorite Chef Lizette. I'm a startup and plan on using both Shopify and Square on my site for my cookie business. What are your thoughts, Loren?
Well, clearly I'm very biased about questions like this because we have a big retail business that provides point-to-sale solutions, provides chip and pin readers, all those kinds of things. And so I always look at startups and I think optimization of time, right? As a startup founder, as a startup employee, you don't have a huge number of resources. You don't have a lot of time. If you can consolidate the things you're using and just log in once and manage something, my personal opinion is that is a better approach. So if you're using Square or interested in using Square, my advice is check out Shopify's retail platform. And we rewrote it. It's brand new. The hardware is gorgeous. It is very functional. If that can't work, and sometimes it can't for some, for various reasons, cool. I don't think we have customers that use multiple platforms plugged into Shopify all the time. But especially the startup founders, I think optimize your own time. Again, this isn't less software is better software, right? So I would just say check out our retail. If it still doesn't work, there's no problem. Lots of people use the combination together.
Cool. Next question comes from Lewis Sage. What marketing strategies have you found best when linking to a Shopify store?
Yeah, there are some really amazing social strategies in play. Community building is like the thing that I find just the most stunningly compelling. It's hard. It's a long tail approach. It's not like a campaign you send out and 10 minutes later you have 1 million people following you. But the snowball effect, and so the one I'm always the most fascinated by is Gymshark. Gymshark's community is rabid.
Oh, yeah.
And it's taken them 6 years to build it. But this community is so big and so loyal and so consumed with that brand. And that brand is so engaged in its community that they basically have to do no other marketing. Right? Like they can launch product with zero marketing and sell it all out. Right? Because they've worked for so long, and and it's hard and it's costly, but like it's super valuable. The other one, and this is I think where if you're early in your stage and you don't quite know where to go, my advice is always, there are really smart folks in the world, like Zubin, like Vayner, who like do this for a living. Don't go shotgunning around with your own money. Like, call some folks who know how to do this and be like, here's the brand I have, here's the target market I'm going after. What's the best option? It may be really smart social media ads, right? I'm going to blow people's minds. I have seen killer, this is going to sound insane, killer direct mail ads. I can't believe I just said those words in 2020, but it's you got to know your customer. The key now is like, it's not blasting media anymore. No one has time for that. It doesn't actually work anyways. It's scalpeling media into the group that you want, right? And so, if you're new to it, ask for advice. If you've been doing it for a long time, ask for advice because you'll get new things. But I'm a big believer in storytelling as the primary mechanism. Get your story right. They care who you are. They care the background. They care what your brand story is, how you produce your products, how you deliver them. They care about those things. Last one I'll give you, and move on because I'm sure there's other questions, is post-purchase. So I had a customer show me a post-purchase model where it's like you got the product, and in the product was the discount code for the next product. And I was just like, oh my God, it's so good. It's so simple, and so few people do it this well. Yep. And it's just like, because it's like the moment the person is the most happy is when they're unboxing. It's just like unbox post-purchase is like a monster missed opportunity for a lot of people.
Totally. And it's about that surprise and delight, right?
Yes.
Like that we have some clients that they sell whatever they sell, and they'll put in samples in there. They'll put other things.
Yes.
Think about when you used to go to whatever, Macy's, Nordstrom, you buy perfume and they throw samples, and everybody loves those samples. People like those things, surprise and delight. The one thing I'll mention as well, everything Loren's talking about here is about improving that lifetime value and limiting customers that only buy from you once. It's not to say you don't want those customers, but that's not where your focus should be. Your efforts in marketing should be to focus on customers that have a connection with your brand. And they're not going to have that connection just because you have a basic page with a bunch of products on them. Give your backstory, create content for them. Take that Gymshark model and take a fraction of it and start scaling it from there. Awesome. G Cruz asks, for the ones that don't know how to do this, is there opportunity for consulting?
So I would say, Zubin, you're probably better to answer this question than I am. I'll give my short answer. Yes, right? There's a mountain of resources in the world. We produce a ton of them at Shopify, just like how-to guides, very simple, basic things for getting started, especially if you're early in the stage, you don't have a lot of money. There's a huge community of which, Vayner and Zubin are a part of people who are dedicated to Shopify and dedicated to Plus, who are just out here trying to help people. Like, ultimately, if you're a partner with Shopify, you're a partner because you believe in the mission of creating more entrepreneurs.
Totally.
And so, while yes, there's the top end of all these markets where there's big contracts and lots of money being thrown around, and that's just a thing, but there's a nearly unlimited amount of information and sharing and opportunity at the other end. Folks who are just giving away resources constantly because we just want entrepreneurs to be successful. And so, yes, there's an opportunity, even if you're just starting out.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add to that as well is that I let's just talk about myself for a minute. I have a tendency to read like short form articles, but really the value you get are in the long form pieces.
Yep.
So like Shopify's got a lot of these actually online where you look at it and you're like, shit, this is a long fucking scroll. But take it at your own pace. That is where you actually learn stuff that is meaningful, that allows you to go deep. Otherwise, you're just going to be super high level. Cool, thanks for the question.
I actually agree with that wholeheartedly. Summary data is fun and it's good for clickbait, right? Like it just is, because like, look, it's special, isn't it's pretty. Long form is where the gold is, right? I mean, there are some monster thought leaders in the world pumping out stuff that until you get 10 minutes into the read, you didn't even get to the good stuff yet, right? And it's just like, it's out there. You just Google it, you find it, it's everywhere.
Yeah, just a shout out to Jack Butcher. Visualize this. Check out his stuff on Twitter. He is absolutely, Visualize Value. He's absolutely brilliant. And if you go deep, he has courses, all sorts of stuff. Chocolate Mountain. So asked about, would a startup begin on Plus? Obviously, Empathy Wines started on Plus. We built that experience for them. When's a good time to make a move? One thing we didn't talk about, Loren, which I think this frames perfectly, is very quickly, tell us the main differences between Plus and regular Shopify.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start there, and then I'll answer this question because it's a really good question. So main differences are, there's a bunch of technological differences. So there's a bunch of features that exist on Plus. The main one is like, ultimately, we're trying to build an operating platform that works at the company level so that you can log into multiple stores, manage multiple accounts, manage multiple inventories, all that kind of stuff without having to log back in and out of the platform. There's a bunch of APIs, things like Shopify Flow, which is the automation tool, Launchpad, which is our scheduler, and the other thing that is super critical that we give at Plus that isn't available at Shopify is the humans. The account managers, the launch engineers, the folks that help you move and help you make decisions and help you find the right apps and partners and that kind of stuff. And so the collection is Plus. Now, the question of when. My advice is always this. Plus is, first, not for everybody. I just put it out there. We celebrate all the time the customers that we interact with that we're like, this isn't going to work. Right? So, you're great. We love you. You should probably find another platform to run on because what you want to do isn't going to do well with us. There's a lot of ultra customized stuff in the world that is just not going to be really best suited for Plus. If you're a startup, here's my advice. Shopify has lots of plans. You're probably better off on one of them. And here's why I say that. Our pricing is $2,000 a month, or 0.25% of the revenue coming through the store. If you're a startup, $2,000 a month is real money. And so you could probably better use that money on customer engagement, right? And customer experience and your initial set of ad buying and trying to get your first set of customers than paying for the platform. Shopify's other plans, Basic, Shopify Advanced, ultra powerful plans, even when they're $29, $79. So generally my advice is don't start on Plus. I want Plus customers, but you'll get there. You'll have plenty of time to upgrade into Plus, but like optimize your spend when you're small because it matters. Cash flow rules in startup land. Totally. And so like, I know people are like, but I want the big one, right? It's like, I get it. I get the desire to have the big plan. I do. But like, honestly, this is why Shopify is so amazing, is start where it makes sense. We're going to be here for you when you're ready. And so when you're ready, we'll help you get there. But until then, go where you should go.
And one comment on that regarding Empathy Wines and other clients of ours that start on Plus, there's some very specific features that they need that Plus has. So Launchpad, for example, very quickly allows you to basically say, hey, on Sunday night at midnight, I want to have a completely different homepage experience. So we can build that, schedule it, and it launches. And then at Monday at midnight, I want to revert back to the other one. So those are the types of things that are available, or certain API features that are required for integrations. So unless you have those types of requirements, totally with you. So let's jump.
My experience is, my experience is that's an 80-20 rule. 80% of startups don't need Plus yet. Yep. They need to be focused on other things. 20% of them will be so specifically required that it makes sense. But my guess is, like, Zubin said, you're not in the 20. I mean, it's probably rare that people are in the 20. So.
Totally. All right, last question. So Luis Camilo Strada asks, what is the best way to optimize sales and mobile phone visits and provide a friendly use? My website has 75% of views through mobile phones. Thank you in advance. So let me hop on that one real quick.
Yeah,
Loren.
Zubin, you answer that.
Yeah,
You're an expert.
just really quickly. The best mobile experience is a mobile experience that's built for mobile, not a mobile experience that is the desktop experience that is just collapsed for mobile. So make sure, Luis and others, that when you're building your site on Shopify, you're building your theme, or you're working with another a partner to do that, that they actually have views specific to mobile. So they're not just taking your regular cart that you have on desktop and stacking it for mobile, or they're not taking your product page. There's certain things that you need to have. And then the other thing is there's certain things you don't want on mobile. So make sure that you have the ability to turn certain pieces of content off on mobile that will negatively impact the experience. All right, last question for Loren from me, which is, yo, that wasn't the question, but what up, Gary V?
Hey, Gary.
So, last question from me. We're going to start it this week. You're our first guest that we're asking this. Trying to get insight from successful people like yourself. What is your work from home routine? Morning to night.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay, so I work from home. At first, I hated it. I'm starting to love it now, and here's why. I limit the number of hours I'm willing to spend like this, right, in a day. Because what happened when I first went is I just converted everything to an online meeting, and I spent 8 hours a day in front of a screen, and by the end, I had nothing. I was totally burnt. I was physically exhausted, and it could not continue. And so I wake up, I get my coffee as I always did. I come into my office. I have a space, but I'm telling you, the hack I've found is you can't be on this screen all the time. It's totally not sustainable, and it feels like that's letting people down, because it's like, there's so much to do. I get it, but if you aren't there to do it because you're just burnt, like, it's not going to work. Other hack, meetings. Here's one to try. Most of these meetings, right, that you get asked for should be 10 to 15 minutes. We, by default, because Google Calendar and everything defaults us to an hour or defaults us to half an hour, just accept an hour or half an hour meetings.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you, try to make most of your meetings 15 minutes. You're going to get so much time back. It'll be ridiculous. You will feel so much better. So time management is the hack, right, to this. Experiment with it. My routine is wake up. I don't start work really until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. I leave work every day at about 5 o'clock, 5:30. I work very efficiently. Right, so I'm getting a shit ton done in that time, but I am not burning 19-hour days. I got to be doing this for 100 years, according to Toby, and so I got to figure out how to be sustainable. So that's my routine.
I love that. And just one thing to add on your point about meetings, Gmail has a feature. It's hidden. You got to find it, but it allows you to make your default meeting time not necessarily like 30 minutes or 15, but 5 minutes less. So you can make your default meeting time 25 minutes or 10 minutes. So that you have that little buffer between meetings for other things. Amazing. Loren, this was absolutely amazing. We're going to have to get you back on really soon. Lots of wisdom, lots of insight. Loved it. Thank you, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being supporters. Thanks for everyone who tuned in and asked great questions. I mean, we're all in this crazy thing together, and so I'm happy to talk, and thanks for having me.
Love it. See you soon. Thanks, everybody. See you all next week. Bye-bye.